Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to my second homeland of Sweden once again, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne and at the very south of the country. Now, we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel quite a few times before. These guys are a very well established and very well respected name within the Swedish craft beer scene these days, and if people were to ask me about them, I would say that they are most definitely best known for their big Imperial stouts, although I have had a few other styles of beer from this brewery over the years, and those have been pretty damn good as well. So this is one of the Swedish breweries that I would highly recommend that you check out. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I've had from them many times before. It's a sub-style that I've had a few times from them before and that I know they can do very well, and I've also heard very good things about this particular beer too. So this one was quite an interesting find for me. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head back to Sweden. We're going to go to my home county of Skåne in the very south of the country, and to be specific, we are going to go to Malmö. And we're going to have a look then at another beer from the wonderful Nerd Brewing. So this particular beer is called Bitwise. It comes in at 10.2% ABV. It's an Imperial Stout, but to be specific, they're describing this one as a Brazilian Capuccino Imperial Stout. So yeah, this should be really interesting. This is a beer that I found kind of randomly in a bar called Biropolis in Jerez in the south of Spain, and I hadn't managed to get anything from Nerd Brewing, if I remember correctly. So that was why I managed to pick this one up. I found it randomly in Spain, of all places, and I wanted to get a Nerd Brewing review done during this kind of Swedish cycle that I'm doing on the channel. But if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I love an Imperial coffee stout, and some of the best Imperial coffee stouts in the world, of course, come from Brazil, and you know, the smoothie sours and stuff there. Brazilian craft beer generally is awesome, but when I saw that Nerd Brewing had done a Brazilian Cappuccino Imperial Stout, I was, of course, immediately interested. And the weird thing about this for me is that I don't even really like coffee, but I love Imperial coffee stouts. So yeah, as you can tell, really excited to try this one. Let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Nice to return to Nerd Brewing as well for the first time in about 2.5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Nerd Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because I'm working my way through the Swedish beers that I brought back from my trip back to Europe in the summer. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go into my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Nerd Brewing once again then. So, Nerd Brewing, as I mentioned to you earlier on, are based in Malmö in Skåne in the very south of Sweden, and the company was founded by Hannes Gruber and Karin Karlsson back in 2015, and they had their debut at the Malmö Öl and Whiskey Festival that year. And both of these guys were basically big beer enthusiasts who wanted to get into the industry. So Hannes had been a home brewer for quite a long time and got very good feedback on his beers, and it was this that inspired him to turn professional. He of course comes from a background in software development, and you know, that's the main reason why a lot of these beers have kind of programming names as their names, and it is the inspiration behind Nerd Brewing and their slogan Open Source Brewing. But he was taking care of the brewing side of things, which of course he still does, but in the early days Karin was taking care of the business side of things. She was an entrepreneur and trader within the IT industry, although she isn't part of the company anymore. I think she was only involved for like the first year or so or something like this. But basically they started up with a very small, modest production, but they became one of the most highly rated Swedish breweries on Untappd. For a long time these guys were the top rated brewery in the country actually. So the beers were initially brewed at the Lilla Ölfabriken Chad beer facility in Rosengård in Malmö, and they did brew a couple next door in South Plains, but the company officially joined with Chad beer and Lilla Ölfabriken to form a collective, but they continued to sell their beers under their own brands. Nerd Brewing of course brew mainly Imperial Stouts, but over the years we have tried, I had a hazy IPA from them at one stage, I've had a barley wine, and I think I've maybe had one or two others over the years too, if memory serves me correctly. But in the early days, other than some beer festivals around Sweden, it was actually very difficult to get a hold of the Nerd Brewing beers. But from 2018 onwards, they started selling their beers to Systembolaget, and then in March of 2021, a new collective called Molecule was announced, and that includes Elm 11, Nerd Brewing and Chad Beer, and they started a new brewery, or formed a new brewery facility, if we can call it that, in Arlöv, which is just a little bit to the northeast of Malmö, and there they had a 1500 litre brew kit. In late 2022 they had their first brew pub day, and they continued to do this regularly over the next few years, but then in mid 2024 it was announced that Molecule Brewing Collective would dissolve, and that Chad Beer and Elm 11 would merge under the Elm 11 name, and then Nerd Brewing would move on and start brewing their beers separately, and I believe that's what has been happening over the last year or so. But yeah, as of September 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 145 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But like I said to you, Nerd Brewing, very very good for these big Imperial Stouts. That is of course Hannes's favourite style of beer, and he just likes kind of tinkering with the recipes and things like that from what he told me. So yeah, the way that all of this kind of pieces together, I think, is very nice for this brewery, and Hannes is a lovely guy too. So drop him a message and I'm sure he'll be able to chat to you a little bit. And yeah, the other thing is you can get a lot of the recipes for these beers on the Nerd Brewing website, which is why they called themselves open source brewing. So yeah, oh, that's actually not on the can anymore. Maybe I'm telling you lies about that. Maybe they've changed it. But yeah, anyway, a very good Imperial Stout brewery, and one of the Swedish craft breweries that I would really recommend you check out. These guys and Smeds på Slott and Dugas Brewery, of course, are all very good in the Imperial Stout category. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Nerd Brewing, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page as well to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. That's the end of your history section. So deep breath, there we go. So yeah, I'd just like to have a little look at the artwork on this one, which is quite nice. You can see the kind of coffee beans. I don't know if that's a little bit of cinnamon stick there as well, but yeah, you can see the artwork on this one is a wee bit different compared to what we've seen from Nerd Brewing in the past, and there you can see the Nerd Brewing symbol on the side of the can there as well. But yeah, plain silver top on the can, a 330 milliliter one. This, I'm guessing, oh no, it says this one was brewed at Molecule in Malmö, so this has obviously been before Nerd Brewing have moved out of the facility in Arlöv. But yeah, like we said earlier on, a 10.2% Imperial Stout with Brazilian Capuccino added into it. This should be really interesting. So yeah, let's get it out into the glass then and see how we go. The Bitwise, very very curious about this one. So yeah, when it comes to Imperial coffee stouts, you know, coffee beans for me are one of my favourite adjuncts that you can put into Imperial stouts, and the main reason for that is that they are pretty much as diverse as hops. You know, you've got the different bean variety. First off, you can grow the different bean varieties in different geographical regions of the world, so you know, you're talking about soil profiles, water profiles and things like that. And from what I understand, the maso, the meters above sea level at which the coffee bean is grown, also plays a significant role, because you know, the higher up you grow them, the more you get these fruity and aromatic flavours out of the beans. But yeah, there's some really great coffees from Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam and Ethiopia and places like this. So I love Imperial coffee stouts for that reason, just because the beans are so diverse in flavour. But yeah, anyway, you can see that this beer poured with just about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head there. That head is just fading away to be a sort of thinner foamy layer there, and you've got that nice ring around the edge of the glass. But if you take a wee look at that, you can see there's some kind of medium-ish sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid, but yeah, the head gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go. But yeah, it looks absolutely great. Lovely sort of dark ebony rosewood colour in this one, which is what you'd expect of an Imperial Stout. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to the black styles of beer, the porters and the stouts and stuff like this, it's very difficult to affect the colour of these beers with the with barrel aging and so on. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. A few bubbles kind of breaking the surface of the liquid there, and yeah, there's not too much visible on the side of the glass too. If we shine the light through this one, there's a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to the beer, but not overly much, in all honesty. The other thing to note about this beer is that it contains a bit of lactose and a bit of oat, but it doesn't have wheat in it. So yeah, mostly malted barley in this one, but that's maybe the reason why this one appears to be just that little bit clearer. But appearance-wise, there's nothing particularly surprising about this beer when you consider what style and sub-style it is. Maybe the coffee beans in this one, or the coffee grinds, I guess it'll be if it's cappuccino, will affect the colour of it a little bit. But yeah, I think this should be really interesting. Now, when it comes to the Imperial Stout style category, there's a few ways that you can play with these beers. You can do a double mash, which is going to give you a very big, thick, sticky sort of mouthfeel. You can put adjuncts into the beer, which is going to give you kind of some really potent flavours. You can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you a little bit of a more complex brown sugary sort of character out of the beer, or you can do a little bit of barrel aging, which is going to, where you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel, but you'll get all of these kind of infused flavours in it as well. So yeah, I'm curious to see what this one's going to be like actually, if we're going to get a slightly longer wort boil or whatever, or if it's going to be double mash. We'll just need to see. But yeah, that's all we need to say about the technicalities of the style. Let's go on and actually have a look at the aroma of this one then, because I'm very curious about it. Look at the lacing on that as well when you sugar it up. It looks absolutely lovely. So aroma time, let's do it. Oh yeah, that aroma is absolutely lovely. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this is quite an interesting one. The fruity character that's coming out of this, it's actually quite sharp in the beginning, but then yeah, you get this, the fruity character is quite sharp in this one, but then yeah, you get that lovely sort of smooth, you get that lovely sort of smooth cappuccino character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this one, I think, is really, really interesting. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that with this one. The way that this goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. But let's just break the aroma down then and describe it for you more in depth. But I will say this is one of the sharper smelling Imperial coffee stouts, or Imperial stouts generally, that I've come across from their brewing. But yeah, let's do this. So, the backbone of the beer in this one, you've got that lovely roasty, toasty, well-fired black malt in this one, and that's special B. I know that Hannes likes to use a little bit of special B, but you do have a wee bit of a kind of softer bread crusty character in there as well, which I think will be a bit of Carafa, German Carafa malt. That of course comes from the Weiermann maltery in Bamberg. It's a trademarked one if I remember correctly. So yeah, you've got that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. There's a bit of woodiness in there. Then you've got the smoother rye bready bread crust in there. And then on top of that, you have a lovely big, very oily brown bready bread crust coming out of this one. Or you've got a big oily rye bready character, sorry, brain's not working. So above the bread crust, you know, and the woody characters, maybe a wee bit of cracker in there as well. But yeah, you've got this big, oily rye bready sort of character coming out of this one. There is a wee bit of wholemeal brown bread in there. I'm getting some nuttiness as well. And then yeah, you're getting elements of like a chocolate sponge cake, a more chocolate brownie type character as well. Yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. So yeah, I think the sort of chocolate brownie side of things in this beer is really interesting. That big oily sticky chocolate brownie that comes out of this one I really quite like. But yeah, on the chocolatey side of the beer, for me, you can smell, I think it comes across as being maybe like 80-90% cocoa chocolate, because it's really rich and really kind of fruity, and I think that's kind of one of the things that's contributing to this beer overall. So yeah, I like the way that goes together in this one. But yeah, on top of the kind of chocolatey and cakey part of the beer, there's definitely a good little bit of brown sugar coming out of this beer. So for me, I'm getting some toasty brown sugary notes. There's a wee bit of a leathery brown sugary character as well, and I do know that that Hannes likes a long wort boil in his beer, so you can smell that kind of leathery brown sugary character in there as well. And then on top of that, there's so you got toasty brown sugar, leathery brown sugar, sweet caramel, and a wee bit of a treacle molasses type note to this one. But yeah, I will say that the coffee in this disappears into the back of the nose a little bit the more that you smell of this one. The more that your nose adjusts to this, the Cappuccino, I think, goes back a little bit. But if we focus on that coffee side of the beer for the moment, for me, the coffee in this beer, it's quite an aromatic roast, and I think it's quite a fruity one. There's a lot of raisiny and plummy characters coming out of it, but there's a little bit of earthiness, and it's quite a sort of smooth roast that comes out of it as well. So smooth roast, a little bit earthy, nice floral notes, and then you've also got that big kind of fruity character that comes out of it as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this one, I think, is really nice, and that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, on the yeasty side of things then, in the back of the nose, there is a little bit of that kind of phenolic-y, Scottish, English, Christmas puddingy sort of note there. I can kind of smell some of that coming out of the beer. But other than that, it's a little bit more of a, yeah, I'm getting a little bit more of a sort of rye bready character, some wholemeal brown bread, and then yeah, wee bits of cracker and bread crust and things. So all of that really goes together quite nicely in the yeasty side of things with this beer. And the more that you smell of it, the more the yeasty side you get out of the beer. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty part of the beer, and that is of course the most complex part of it. Now on the hoppy side of things then, remember an Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward style of beer, and this one is a year old as well, so some of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it, but you still get a little bit of green component in this one. There's a lovely little bit of like smooth earthiness to it, so a wee bit of earthiness, a little bit of woody character as well, nice floral notes, and a little touch of grassy character as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this beer, I think, is really very nice. So yeah, a little bit of grassiness, wee bit of floral character, some earthy notes, and a wee bit of woody kind of character to it as well. So yeah, I think the way that all of that pieces together in this one is very nice. In terms of the fruity side of things with this beer then, just to round off the aroma, yeah, just to round off the aroma, we've got a little bit of like, there's definitely a bit of raisiny sharpness in this one, which I think comes from the coffee bean and from the hop itself. So there's raisin in there, plums, figs, blackberry for me, but I think we're going to get more kind of dried fruity characters out of it as well. And again, the kind of grassy notes from the hops are coming out of this one, the more that you smell of it too. But the fruity notes, I think, in this one are actually quite pungent. I've said that a few times. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this beer, I think, is really nice. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time for us to try this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Bitwise, a 10.2% Imperial Stout, an Imperial Brazilian Cappuccino Stout, if we want to be precise, from the wonderful Nerd Brewing in Malmö in Skåne, back in my second motherland of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh. Right. I'm going to say that's really, it's quite interesting this. I am wondering if there's been a little bit of oxidation in this can, because it's quite, the fruity character is quite sharp in the beginning, and yeah, I think there's been a bit of oxidation here. Like it's very, very sharp with the fruits in the beginning, and that would account for what's going on with the aroma, in all honesty. But the aftertaste and what you're getting out of it is spot on. So I don't know, you know, I'm quite curious about that. There might well, as I say, just be a little bit of oxidation in this one. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be quite as sharp as that in the beginning, to be honest with you, because most of the Nerd Brewing beers have that element of RIS to them, and this beer does give you that into the aftertaste. But I think there has been a slight oxidation on this. Is the can like properly sealed? I think, yeah, seems to be. Not really an issue with the can from the looks of it. I don't know, but I do wonder if there is just a little bit of oxidation in this one. I've never had that with the Nerd Brewing beers before, but then again, I think this is the first stout that I've had out of the can, so that could well be the reason. Most of the Nerd Brewing beers, I think if not all of them, other than the IPA, have all been bottled. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make. But yeah, the aftertaste in this one is really nice and kind of what I would expect of a Nerd Brewing beer. So we'll just go through and describe this one and see what we're getting. But like I say, I wonder if there's a wee bit of oxidation there, because I don't think you're going to get that level of sharpness from any coffee bean, to be honest with you. I think that's got to be a little bit of oxidation there. But anyway, we'll try and we'll just enjoy the beer, because it is still pretty nice, in fairness. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you've got that little bit, you've got a lot of like big raisiny kind of sharpness and a kind of, yeah, raisiny and black curranty sort of sharpness out of this one, kind of tart almost. As I say, I suspect a little bit of oxidation in this one, but if you focus on the malty side of things, if you focus on the middle third of your palate, you can feel the other flavours evolving out of it as you know, as you go. So we'll go to that middle third of the palate then, and yeah, you've got that roasty, toasty, sort of special B, well fired backbone in there. You can definitely get that. As you move further forward in this one, you've got a little touch of woody character in there, and you can also feel a bit of a softer bread crusty note in there, from what I suspect is a little bit of carafa. You know, there's a bit of roastiness there, but it's not overly kind of aggressive, if that makes sense. But yeah, on top of that, there's a kind of layer of cracker. These sort of backboney notes are something that you'll very often find with the Nerd Brewing beers. But above that, there's definitely a sort of kind of smoother rye bready kind of character out of this one. And you've also got a more wholemeal brown bready character in there as well. But the presence of the oat in this, and also the lactose, is really smoothing out the kind of backbone that this beer has. And within those bready layers that I'm talking about too, there are some kind of nutty elements coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the kind of nutty elements that you get out of this one, they do linger into the aftertaste, along with a bit of the woodiness that's in the beer, and that adds quite a nice little bit of complexity to it as well. But on top of the kind of more wholemeal brown bready layer, you start to get, I think there's a little bit of an almost like chocolate spongy type character in there. the bit that I was picking up about the kind of more gooey chocolate brownie sort of thing, I don't think that really comes to fruition in this beer. Yeah, it's more a kind of smooth wholemeal brown bready layer that's above that. Then you have more of a, yeah, then you've got a little bit more of a, how would we say, yeah, there's a little bit more of a kind of cocoa nibby type layer on this one. So the beer as well, I would say that too. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So if you go above the kind of chocolate spongy layer, you can feel like an almost dry cocoa nibby type layer to the beer. So it's maybe about 40% cocoa chocolate further forward on that middle third of your palate, but then yeah, further back, it's got more of a kind of 70 or 80% cocoa chocolatey character coming out of it. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really quite nice in this one. Above the chocolatey layer you start to get some of the brown sugary notes, so let's focus on those to round off the middle third of your palate in this beer. So yeah, the brown sugary side of this beer, for me, the backbone of it is a little bit toasty, but then the next layer up is really leathery and really smooth. And as I say, I know that Nerd Brewing like to use a kind of longer wort boil. But in the middle of your palate, sitting on top of that, you've got that little circle that sits there. There's sweet caramel around the edge, and then there's a more treacly molasses. There's a more kind of treacly molasses type note coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together in this one I think is pretty damn nice. So the middle third of your palate's got everything you would kind of want from this type of beer. The coffee of course comes out a little bit further back. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate and the middle third of your palate are going to give you very similar flavours, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you've got that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You've got the kind of rye bready character on the base, the wholemeal brown bready character on top of that. Then you've got the kind of chocolate sponge, and I think the kind of coffee character in this beer is in that chocolate sponge. So the coffee side of this beer for me, it's like I said, it's got a smooth roast to it. There's a little bit of earthy character there. I get quite a nice floral aromaticity out of it too. And yeah, it's got a wee bit of a kind of fruity note also. So yeah, the way that that all pieces together I think is really nice in this one too. So yeah, as I say, that is something that I do really quite like in this beer. The coffee side of it is great, but on the back third of your palate, say, the kind of special B, the roasty toastiness of the special B really comes out there. The next layer up, you can feel the kind of slightly drier bread crust from what I suspect is carafa. You've got a cracker layer. The rye bready layer is next up, and that's a little bit lighter, taller, more dry and more airy. You can say the same about the wholemeal brown bready layer, which sits above that. And then yeah, you've got the kind of chocolate spongy layer sitting above that too, and you can feel a little bit of the cocoa nibby character going on top of that, and the chocolatey layer that you've got there is more kind of roasty and toasty if you like, and a wee touch of the brown sugar just goes over the top of it. Then you've got all the yeasty character coming out of the beer. So let's focus on that yeasty part then. So yeah, the yeasty part of the beer for me, and again this might be affected a wee bit by what I suspect is a little bit of oxidation, but yeah, the yeasty core of it is a little bit more like a sort of Scottish English kind of Christmas pudding type thing. It's that really gooey sort of figgy berryish pudding. Then if you go around that, it's got a little bit of a more oily rye bread, then a drier, more toasty rye bread, and the very edge of it, it's a little bit more kind of like a toasty, well-fired bread crust, and that lingers into the aftertaste along with the coffee. So this beer really does give you that RIS backbone that you'd expect of the Nerd Brewing beers. That comes out really into the aftertaste, even with that little touch of oxidation that it seems to have got from the can. But yeah, the aftertaste in this one is really very, very nice. And the oats, I think I have had quite a few oaty and oatmeal Imperial Stouts from there Brewing before. This is one of the smoother ones you're going to get, but we'll come to the mouthfeel a little bit later on. But yeah, as I say, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. And the earthiness does have a fair wee bit of pungency to it. As you move further forward, it becomes a little bit more woody and very slightly herbal. That spreads further forward until you reach the front corners of your palate, and it shows you a little bit of floral aromaticity. And then round the front curve of your tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy. So let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You've got the rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread in the middle, then the more chocolate spongy character on top. The base of that front third of your palate, again, you've got the toasty, well-fired bread crust and the more kind of smooth rye bready bread crust on top of that. And then yeah, it's the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, the little bit of chocolate sponge, and then a wee bit of the toastier side of the brown sugar that creeps forward. You do get a little element of the coffee bean and the sort of fibrousy side of the coffee bean in there, and then on top of that, you've got that nice big, you've got that nice kind of oily bubble where the fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. Yeah, I'd have to say, I don't know, as I drink more and more of this, my palate's kind of adjusting to that sharp kind of fruitiness that the beer has, and I'm questioning now whether it is oxidation or what, but I can maybe ask Hannes about that later on. This is it's unusual to have this in the Nerd Brew beers, and I suspect it probably is just to do with the transition from bottle to can, we'll say that, because if this is the very first can I've ever seen from these guys, and with the darker beers of course. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things then. So yeah, yeah, with that fruity side of things, as I said earlier, you do get that sharp raisiny and blackberry sort of thing when you take the beer in, so be aware of that. But yeah, if you go to that oily bubble at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a bit of the sharper raisin on top. You've got the big oily plums in there underneath that. There's a slightly drier pruny note, but that's quite minimal. You do get that kind of datey character in the base on the back half of that front third of your palate. But yeah, as you move further forward, you've got a little bit more of a kind of big juicy sort of figgy character coming out of it. So yeah, there's the big juicy kind of figgy notes in there. Then as you move further forward, it's got as you move further forward from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of, I would say, black currant underneath, and the oily sort of blackberry type notes sitting on top of it. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. The fruity character is pretty good, but as I say, I do think there's a little touch of oxidation in here, which is unfortunate because, yeah, the Nerd Brewing beers, as I've always said, have a little bit of that RIS quality to them. They're always very smooth and a little bit old school in a way, and the oxidation just kind of takes a bit of that away. But the aftertaste, you can tell the malt base and everything in that is good. I think it is really just an unfortunate thing that's happened with the can, and if this is one of the first cans they've produced, we can put it down as a teething problem. So yeah, that's probably what's going on here. Because I really doubt that the coffee bean in this one, or the yeast, and even the hops, I really doubt they're going to combine and give you such a sharp fruitiness as what is going on in this beer. We can say that. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the mouthfeel in this one, as you'll often get from Nerd Brewing, it's full-bodied, the carbonation is very, very smooth. As you often get though with Scandinavian or Nordic beers generally, we should say, it's got that element of kind of cleanliness to it. You can feel the water quality in this one. It does say on the side of the can here that this one is only 30 IBUs. In fairness, I don't know if I would have guessed that. I would have thought it was maybe about 50 or 60, because you do get a real dryness from the coffee side of things in there, and you also get that roasty toasty character from the Special B and what I suspect is Carafa this one. So yeah, the dryness, you could easily conflate some of the dryness and roastiness within this beer as well, which is kind of interesting with the bitterness. So yeah, 30 IBUs. Don't know if I really believe that, in honesty, but that's another thing. But yeah, the malty base, as we said, it's kind of roasty and toasty underneath, smoother in the middle, and there's a bit of dry sweetness on top. The yeasty character in the back here and the back of the palate gives a wee bit of sweetness there as well, and the coffee is kind of lingering in there, but it's a really nice smooth coffee that's coming out of this one. As I say, the fruity side of this beer though is a little bit difficult to really talk about because there is a touch of oxidation to it. But yeah, you've got some nice kind of, you can feel into the aftertaste, you've got some nice kind of plummy and figgy and datey sort of notes coming out of the beer, which is what you would normally expect from this. But yeah, it's been interesting to try this one. As I say, a bit disappointing about the oxidation, but otherwise the beer I think is very, very good quality. If we'd got this in a bottle, of course, there would have been no issues with it, I would suspect. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been the Bitwise, a 10.2% Brazilian Cappuccino Imperial Stout from the wonderful Nerd Brewing in Malmö in Skåne in the very south of Sweden. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Till the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nerd Brewing as well, and we will see about returning to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Nerd Brewing's social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.